Well, thank you for coming out this evening. It's beyond the call of duty to come out in apparently up to 200 km/h winds to hear an economist. So I thank you very much. What I normally do in talks such as this is I normally look at the big picture, but as Alice has shown, looking at what is actually happening on the ground is very powerful to get a clearer and a deeper idea of what a food crisis really means. So I'd like to just give you a little bit of information about the woman in the picture. Her name is Agnes Ekalan, and she lives in a small village near a town called Lodwar in northwestern Kenya. Now, she's a widow, she has 6 children, she's been a widow for many years, and she told a UN official from the UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs that, now I'll just quote here, "I trekked the 7 kilometres from our village of Nayatan to Lodwar, carrying a bundle of firewood and reed brooms for sale. Since my arrival yesterday, I have not eaten anything because I have not sold the firewood. I left the children at home without any food. I must sell the firewood today or I will not eat and I will have nothing to take home. I keep asking myself, if I don't sell this firewood, where will I get food? I don't even have the energy to make the return journey home. Surely the government or any rich person should come to our help. We are dying here in Lodwar." Now, sadly, that interview occurred only 3 weeks ago, on the 7th of February. And the point that I want to make very strongly from that is that although the food crisis has dropped somewhat out of the popular attention and the coverage that we get in the popular press, it's still very much alive and creating huge problems for people like Agnes Ekalan and many millions of others. Now, what I'd like to do is to look in a little more detail at some of the points raised in Richard's very good overview of the global food crisis. People often say that economists don't agree. We actually agree about more than we let on in public. We do agree what the main causes of this food crisis have been, and one of the shocking things about it was that there are so many causes. Typically, when we look back to emergency situations with food in the past, it's often been climatic, or it might be civil unrest and violence that have been the predominant causes. But this time we've got a whole raft of causes, some short-term, some long-term. And that's really been one of the big factors that's forced us to look at the whole question of food security. So on the demand side, a very positive thing has been higher incomes, particularly in China. In fact, there's been one estimate that virtually all of the reduction that we've seen in the 21st century of people on $1 a day or less, the extreme poor, in fact it's $1.25 a day now that they use as the yardstick, has actually been due to China, people getting wealthier in China. So China has been an extraordinary force for higher incomes. We're seeing population growth in the background. It doesn't get a lot of coverage. It's about, the figures are not precise, but about 75 million people a year are added to the world's population. Now that's at quite a slower rate compared to, say, the 70s. Population growth has been declining, but it is still a significant net addition to the demand for food. One thing that hasn't had a lot of coverage but it's been important has been the growth of urbanisation. Last year the UN estimated that for the first time in human history, half of the world's population is living in urban or urban-esque, they call it peri-urban, areas. Now, why is this an issue for the food crisis? Well, one of the big things is that people in urban areas don't produce very much food. And I suspect that may be something that changes over time, and it's something that World Vision is beginning to look at as well. How do we get food production increasing in urban areas? And I was actually in South Africa last August for holidays, it turns out, and we did go to some of the townships, and there's quite a lot of vacant ground in these townships which has the potential to be a source of food and to provide people with a buffer against high prices, because one of the problems of being in an urban environment, if you're not producing any food, you are much more exposed to world and market prices. If you are in a rural area, at least you've got the opportunity or the potential to grow a bit more food and just provide that extra buffer and a bit more security. There's been a new element this time around, a new element that's very old in some respects, speculation in food. Now, that might seem to be immoral. It's a fairly controversial topic, although in fact speculation in food is a very old activity. There's some evidence that there's been futures markets in food for a couple of thousand years. So in some ways it's not new, but given the extraordinary events in financial markets, food and other commodity markets seem to be about the best place to put your money at one point in time. And as you'll see in a moment, that seems to have accentuated the volatility of food prices. In the long run, it probably doesn't do much to average food prices, but in the short term, it can have quite an impact in both directions.